at the From Africa to North Carolina pop-up exhibit. We hope you enjoy the program today. We're going to have exhibits from all over the world, and we'll go over all of the journeys that came from Africa to North Carolina on the slave ship. But we hope everybody enjoy. North Carolina is the first place. Goldsboro, North Carolina is the first place in North Carolina to have this exhibit. Lori Grant, who we'll interview later, is the one that is responsible for bringing this to Goldsboro. We're so proud, and we just hope you enjoy the program. We'll be started in a couple of minutes, so I'm going to go over just a little bit about what this is about, from Africa to North Carolina and South Carolina later on, and you can come out and view the exhibit. And it began in the early 1600s, launching the epic journey in both proportion and impact. Enslaved Africans arrived in North Carolina at Beaufort, Beaufort, Brunswick, Edenton, Bern, and Wilmington. And I can speak from this from firsthand experience. My family landed in the Bern area. We are able to trace back our heritage all the way back to the coast of Africa. And so we were my descendants on slave ships. So in an unfamiliar land, these captors forced horrific conditions. Look, y'all, you know I'm right? While developing ways to resist, survive, and build the infrastructure of the nation. Within this paradox, enslaved Africans' history, culture, and economy changed. Enslaved Africans constructed the foundational structures in North Carolina's earliest settlements, transport thousands of miles from their families' homes to North Carolina docks. The enslaved also formed systems of kinship that manufactured diverse cultural threads that connect descendant communities across North Carolina. From 1759 to 1787, 11 voyages are documented through 6 panels, and these are the 6 panels that they show, and then there's additional ones that they'll go in more depth as the speakers speak today. But anyway, everyone, this program is about to begin, so let's start.
Good morning and welcome to the O'Berry Neuromedical Treatment Center here in Goldsboro, North Carolina. We are gathered at the O'Berry Chapel today for a very significant occasion. The occasion is the launching of the open house exhibit, Africa to Carolina. We'd like to give special thanks to the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources for arranging that we should be able to have this wonderful educational and cultural pop-up exhibit. I want to make a note that O'Berry Center is the very first facility in the state of North Carolina to house the pop-up exhibit. So you're going to learn a lot, listen carefully, with heart and mind. Thank you. Well, another factor that you probably aren't familiar with is an organization, which is a workplace initiative put into place by our former director of DHHS, Mandy Cohen. And it is continued in support by our current leader, Cody Kent. What is that organization? It's called DEI, stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And each DSOL facility throughout the state has this workplace initiative based on the value of belonging, inclusion, acceptance, and recognition. So during Black History Month, our DEI Council has assembled together to welcome you to this very special event. And I'm going to turn this over to Charmaine Keffe. Charmaine is one of the co-chairs of our DEI Council. Again, I'm Lori Grant, one of the co-chairs of the DEI Council. Charmaine?
Good morning. I'd like to introduce you to the rest of our DEI members that we have here today. Jean Beckton, Angie Dreer, and Michael Hill.
And we have other members. We'd like to acknowledge that our executive sponsors are Lynette Cox and Dennis Mays. Now, one of the significant things about this event, thank you, ladies, thank you, gentlemen, is the Africa to Carolina pop-up exhibit. The Africa to Carolina exhibit initiates the launching and chronicling of the journey of Africans as they were snatched and ensnared from Africa, taking the voyage, the transatlantic slave trade, enterprise, law and resistance, the timeline of the multidimensional enterprise and how North Carolina was built. I say built on the blood, the sweat, and the tears of these Africans. They entered the ports of Edenton, North Carolina, the ports of Bath, North Carolina, the ports of Wilmington, North Carolina, and their descendants today are proud to say, yes, we helped build this country. At this time, can I have our participants? We have participants who will present to you a wonderful piece of literature that was composed by one of the O'Berry staff members. The title of his poem is Africa to Carolina. Before you we stand in solidarity of heart, mind, and intent to acknowledge that Americans we are, brothers and sisters we shall always be. Africa to Carolina, written by Professor D. McCoy. Presumably, Africans arrived in the colony of South Carolina in 1526. Other indigenous groups were forced to populate in this mix. The English in 1670 launched an economy that did no African a favor. Plantation development success and its growth relied on entrenched slave labor. The Atlantic slave trade is the method by which this travesty was known. By 1708, in South Carolina, the number of enslaved Africans had grown, promulgating a majority in population. The Black community continued to increase.
Spreading throughout the colony of South Carolina, though arduous labor did not cease, in the late 17th century, English traders established direct access to the transatlantic slave trade, forcing many enslaved people to labor in South Carolina, there to live out their days. Immersing in society was not intended, but to endure the bitterness of an enslaved institution. Yet, Africans arose from the heap of ashes, and to society made a great contribution, becoming some of Carolina's earliest capitals, in fact that is so true, increasing productivity of rice plantations in South Carolina and in North Carolina too.
The first slaves came to the colony of North Carolina in 1619, so history proclaims, met with brutal beating, dehumanizing treatment, and excessive violence. Oh, what a shame. The tobacco industry added to thousands of African Americans suffering as families were often displaced. Long working hours was their demise, death away from home without records to be traced. From 1790 to 1860, North Carolina slaves increased by 250,276. A possible reason why.
For production's sake, people were needed to work in fields for long hours. This is enough to make you want to cry. Inhumane treatment for agricultural goods like cotton, tobacco, and rice, profiting large plantations, made slavery a legal practice in the province of North Carolina until January 1st of 1863, with Lincoln's issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation. The economy's growth and prosperity were based on slave labor devoted to the production of tobacco. The oppressive and brutal experiences of slaves and poor whites caused the terrible lives we know.
Despite their circumstances and no apparent freedom or any possible better solution, many of the North Carolina slaves distinguished themselves in the American Revolution. Enacted by Congress, slavery was abolished by the 13th Amendment in December of 1865. It affected 40,000 remaining slaves who were blessed to still be alive. Americans today should never forget history or events of the past. To quote Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I have a dream speech, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Let's give an applause for Professor Dean McCoy. And if you would remain in place, we have a little something special as we transition to our next course. We'd like to ask Administrative Assistant Jean Beckton, who is also a DEI member, if you would come forth with presentation. Do you know that HBCU stands for Historically Black Colleges and Universities? Let's say it again. Historically Black Colleges and Universities. And we are the product, either as attendants, graduates, or financial supporters, or morale boosters. These in front of you have really been in leadership, active in the community, and we want to acknowledge them. So at this time, Jean, if you would read off the names and make this.
Lord, Andrew Dreyer,
And if you would read what it says.
applicant to Carolina Exhibit Launch. This certificate is awarded to Andrew Dreyer, outstanding leadership in the other areas to do.
Give her a round of applause. And we have the same certificate for your leadership and support. And she is a graduate, a proud graduate. She's an NCCU Eagle, HBCU.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Richard Phillips, you also will receive that certificate. And
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And we are so wonderfully blessed that no matter what the occasion, he's a leader and he's a light. Come on. And of course, Michael Neal, he is our safety officer here. We have a certificate for you as well. And all of our HBCU supporters, let's give a round of applause. I'm going to take you first on the spot. Would you name one HBCU, and why is it so wonderful? One HBCU, and why should we have HBCU? What has it done for you? What has it done for the state of North Carolina? Can anyone step forward and name one with pride? Come on now, let's represent
Shaw University.
All right. It is the oldest.
And it's the
It's the oldest formal institution of education, black or white, established in the state of North Carolina. Anybody else step on out?
I represent North Carolina Central University. and it's special in many ways, but we were the first Black law school for North Carolina.
Woo! Come on now. Anybody else want to step on now?
I'm representing North Carolina A&T University. And right now, many family members have went there. It's also the largest A&T in the United States.
All right. And I'm representing Fisk University. Fisk University is very well known for their music department. In particular, they were invited by Queen Victoria. They were former slaves who had cultured their voices under Dr. White, and they were invited to perform for Queen Victoria. Since that time, the Fisk Jubilee Singers have performed for the Lincoln Center, the New York Philharmonic, and most recently have won 2 Grammy Awards for global music. Anybody else? What does HBCU stand for? Historically Black Colleges and Universities. Thank you, supporters. Thank you very much. So when we talk about historical Black colleges and universities, let's put it in context. From Africa to Carolina. We're going to give you a few minutes now that you'll be able to look at some of our media that was sent to us on loan from the North Carolina Department of Cultural and Natural Resources. You can also look at some of the artifacts. So for the next 10 minutes or so, feel free to roam. When we assemble again, we have one last acknowledgement. Feel free to roam, feel free to explore.
So could you explain to us what the exhibit encompass here?
Yes, we have quite a few items. We're going to explain a little bit that's on this table. And on this table, as you know, the drum comes in many sizes. The traditional drum is made from a carved out log, and generally it's goat skin and the hide of antelope or drum. And then these attachments are usually made of animal sinew, which is their muscle. Might even be made of intestine. I'm going to ask Charmaine if she would show us, maybe we've got a couple of items that she has been able to grace us with. We've got a beautiful basket, tell the origin. Or,
This is a head from Zambia, which is in Central Africa.
and this is the roughened edge
Yeah.
of it,
You can actually see the tree, the shape of the tree.
and then the finished product all by hand.
I have over here a basket, which is a Southern African basket, comes from South Africa. The ostrich egg, which is painted, it's a very popular thing in South Africa to take the ostrich eggs and to make pretty paintings on them.
Okay, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Pull this a little bit so people can see. Is it okay for me to touch it on?
Yes, yes.
Do the colors represent a particular?
They probably do for tribes. Most of these are made for tourists. So whether or not they actually represent, something, a particular thing, because now the traditional kente cloth that was woven in West Africa, that actually did have communication within it.
Okay. Now you stated the ostrich egg, and I do not want to pick this up because if I drop this, I'm not about to paint nothing again. But it is absolutely gorgeous. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. We see the walrus, on it. Okay, you all can see it better. And so you can, that's from South Africa. What is it? What is it?
That's actually,
A wilder?
no, that is actually a Cape buffalo.
Cape buffalo,
And
okay.
you see those all over sub-Saharan Africa. They're actually very dangerous. You don't
Yeah,
get
they
very
look-
close to them.
Okay, and you went on to talk about the
I'd like to point out the fertility god, if I can.
Sure.
I know that America, we are a melting pot. I hope you know that we are a melting pot. And part of what the Africans who came over beginning in 1526 or so, when they came over, they had their cultural, their workmanship, their history, and they preserved it in their art. Now, this particular piece is an example of a fertility goddess. Here in the West, in particular in North Carolina, we are traditionally Christian. However, I purchased this item from an individual who had had it imported in from his family in Ghana. And he's a resident, resides in Raleigh, North Carolina. He's an IT tech, but his home is filled with beautiful artifacts. And if you'll note, the female, there's no hesitation about the female anatomy. And some people might say, oh, that's so crude. No, let's put it in perspective. Just as in other civilizations, the female is often the source of wealth, productivity, and she represents burgeoning life. The womb carries with it the fertility of generations. So when you see the anatomy, when you see the enlarged head, as in this one also, it's representing the intellect. Come on, ladies, intellect. Not just the physical beauty, but the intellectual acumen of the female in the African society. You will also see that quite often images of workmanship, someone in work, in a work mode. Why is that important? The home, the village worked as a unit. Would you agree with that, Charmaine?
Yes, but in most of sub-Saharan Africa, the women do most of the work.
The women do most of the work. So I would like to stipulate that if it wasn't for the woman, some things just wouldn't get done around there.
Absolutely true. Nobody would eat.
Nobody would eat. Even probably drawing the water or going to the field or whatever.
And they can carry amazingly heavy loads on their heads.
Amazing. You'll see here another image of the female structure. These two items are simulations of Zulu Africans. I would just say it's an amalgam of the various tribes, but in particular, we see this spear, and I think we thought maybe it
Looks
might.
like a Zulu assegai, which is the Zulu spear that the men carried.
The Zulu assegai. And you'll see the adornment. Isn't this beautiful? The adornment on the male and the female, the beads.
And the Zulus do a lot of bead work.
A lot of beadwork, all by hand.
All by hand.
Yeah. So there's hours and hours of intricate work. And it all has symbolism as far as progression from boyhood to manhood, from being a child to an adult. All of these are symbols of taking their place in society, marked by their hair, their headdress, their jewelry, and of course, these particular weapons. Masks. Masks are traditionally a part of ceremonies, as you probably would know, but this particular one was sold commercially, and you can see that it is hand done. Some of these are mass produced now, but I'm pretty sure when you're on your next trip to Africa, I'm pretty sure you're going to find some of those marketplaces, so you can find some original craftsmen actually working with their hands, and they can explain to you the significance of their tribe and the tribal use of the mat. These are just a few of the artifacts that we have. We have others throughout the facility during the month of Black History Month. In particular, this exhibit that you're going to see, Africa to Carolina, will be housed here from today, which is February 22nd, 2023, through April 14th, 2023. If you're interested in having your group, your community group, a church group, or as an individual, you can call the O'Berry Center at 919-581-4000 and let the operator know that you'd like to schedule to come in for a close-up look and a tour at the O'Berry Center, Africa, to Carolina. The tradition in Africa is called an oral tradition, meaning when the individuals were snatched and snared into the business of slavery, it did not separate them from their heart's home, Africa. It did not separate them from expressing themselves. It did not separate them. Nothing could sever what had been deposited in their heart. So we have remnants in music, and as you saw, in art, that are dispersed throughout North Carolina and the world. One particular song that some of you may have heard at some point is called Kumbaya. Can you say that? Kumbaya. That's right. It's Kumbaya, my Lord. Kumbaya. And it means come by here. Here. Can we say that? Come by here. And I'm just going to give you a rhythm. Can you clap with me? Kumbaya, my Lord. Kumbaya. Kumbaya, my Lord. Kumbaya. Kumbaya, my Lord. Kumbaya. Say, oh Lord. Oh Lord. Kumbaya. Now say, come by here. Come by here, my Lord. Come by here. Come by here. Come by here, my Lord. Come by here. Come by here. Come by here, my Lord. Come by here. Oh Lord. Oh Lord. Come by here. Come by here. Now let's say this. Ba, ya, ba, ya, ba, ya, Just the drum, just the drum. Also, before we leave, we'd like to acknowledge that this is maybe small in somebody's eyes, but I believe that these individuals, if they are able to smile, I believe these individuals, if they are able to give you a vote of yes, I believe these individuals, if in some esoteric way they're able to give a confirmation that what we did today was a good thing, I think they're smiling down on us. What do you think? And without marking who you are and acknowledging who others are, without accepting our differences, what are we? We're too small. So I'd like to say that this has been a wonderful event. And I'd like to acknowledge, if I can, one more time, our media guest. Would you come on up, please? This is a friend of Oberry. She's been here before. She has performed in one of our Black History events, and you can see her and her ministry in dance performing on Wednesday at 10 o'clock at the Black History program in the gym. She is none other than AZ. We call her AZ. AZ. And AZ, would you tell us a little bit about your media outlet, who you are, how long you've been established? It's been a phenomenal road for you.
Yeah, thank you, Lori. I'm AZ Hubbard, and I am the founder of Save News, praise the Lord. We started out as a newspaper, and the Lord graduated us up to a magazine. We then began an online radio station, and we now have 2 TV networks on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. We've been in business as of October, which we just celebrated 10 years. And if you have all social media platforms, come on over, like, share, subscribe. And for all our audience, we have worldwide audience, but for the audience that's here in North Carolina, or if you've been, a few miles, you guys ought to come out here and see this beautiful exhibit. It is absolutely wonderful. We thank Lori for inviting us here, and for the whole DEI staff team. You all have done a beautiful job. It's so encouraging to be able to see these artifacts. Like I stated, mine, we can trace ourselves all the way back to the African coast, and we know what tribe we're from, everything. But for those that do not, this is an honor, and I applaud all of you for what you all have done.
And last but not least, we'd like to thank our Center Director, Ms. Lisa Claremont. She is the reason that we were able to secure this. And we'd also like to thank our executive sponsors, Ms. Lynette Cox and Mr. Dennis Mays. And last but not least, where would we be without our wonderful residents? Thank you to Text. Thank you to our own Brad Smith, who is our own on-site media and administrative support and photographer. And that concludes, but it doesn't end the journey. Continue to explore, continue to love, continue to create an atmosphere of inclusion and belonging. Till next time, have a good one.